Roy, I'm so sorry.
You should be.
I'm so sorry.
You absolutely should be. I'm so angry at you right now.
Did you watch the entirety of the GOP primary presidential debate? All of it?
While drunk.
Well, that's really the only reasonable way of doing it. What'd you think?
It was a shit show.
Who won?
Who won? It's either Vivek or Nikki Haley.
Oh my God! I think Donald Trump won.
I think Donald Trump won.
I think we all lost.
Joe Biden.
Actually, we all lost.
I think Joe Biden and Donald Trump won. I think they virtually guaranteed. What is Rhonda? Rhonda has this line about how, like, as I go around the country and I talk to people, they don't want a replay of. Whose line was that? They don't want a replay of a rematch of 2020, right? Yeah. But that's exactly what they guaranteed, I think, this week.
As I go around the country and talk to people, I realize they don't want to talk to me.
I realize that because they're looking at their phones as I talk to them.
Ay, Dios mío. Nery Saenz, comedian, Cafecito comedian, extraordinaire, is with us again, hot off his big gig at the Miami Improv, and now with us, longtime writer for Esquire magazine, helms the politics blog at Esquire.com. He joins us from Milwaukee, where he attended Wednesday night's show.
I'm sorry, Charlie.
Got to witness Ron DeSantis's malfunctioning live in the flesh. Charlie, how do you think our governor from the great free state of Florida performed this week at the debate?
Well, I think there was one terrifying moment right at the top of the show where he tried to smile. And he looked like somebody had shot 10,000 volts through his nuts.
It looked, well, it was Casey. That's who did it.
I mean, that was a hostage tape smile.
The program
please
wasn't.
Send the money to it. That smile said to America, "Please send the money to the dead drop."
That's.
I'm reminded of Shirley Temple's traumatizing autobiography, where her mother used to say, "Sparkle, Shirley, sparkle, Shirley," and I heard Casey DeSantis's voice like in Ron's head going, "Sparkle, Shirley, smile, be likable." Yeah. It was really traumatizing for him, and I think for all of us watching that.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard another human being mention that he was reminded of Shirley Temple's autobiography. That was a new moment for me.
I don't know that you know anyone who's read Shirley Temple's autobiography, actually.
But in any event, I think DeSantis made one mistake that is going to come back to bite him, and nobody's really called attention to it yet. On a couple of different occasions, he really gilded his military experience.
Mm.
I was next to some SEALs. Where?
At SeaWorld. At SeaWorld, he was next to a bunch of SEALs, I think.
At Miami Aquarium.
No, but I'm serious. Those guys.
It's a manatee.
Those guys don't mess with people using them as props.
Mm.
They're very serious about that whole stolen valor business. And I think sooner or later, that one's going to come back. Not that he needs another bite taken out of his ass, but that one's going to be a real serious one.
So we learned that none of the candidates in the GOP presidential primary believes that human behavior contributes to climate change. None of them support bodily autonomy. I think Ron DeSantis, least of all.
Haley was close. I think she was so close.
She was being political about it.
Right.
She was
but
right.
She was the only one. She was like, "Hey, can we hear them out? Why don't we talk about it?" It was very odd for me to listen to a Republican debate and be like, Am I drunk? Because this person seems kind of reasonable.
I was drunk.
No,
I was drunk.
Roy was drunk. But
a can of wine.
She was. Listen, I think she was right, but what she was also saying was like, "Men, shut up. You can't win this.
Right.
You can't win this. It can't be passed through the Senate." I think it was political expediency more than anything. But she also said that she is quote unquote pro-life. Everybody said they're pro-life. 6 out of 8 of them said that they will support and vote for Donald Trump, even if he is a convicted felon at the time of the of the election,
with a delayed response from DeSantis.
So DeSantis,
who looked around,
dude, like a school kid cheating on the test. DeSantis looked left because he was dead center because he's polling highest. Well, the people who showed up, I don't think combined they poll as high as Donald Trump does.
I think DeSantis looked more like a little kid taking their first dance class or their first dance lesson. You know, where you look at the guy next to you to see if he's doing it right.
Yeah, he's like
sooner or later you both trip over each other.
Yeah, he's the fat kid taking a Zumba class, and he's like, what are the steps? What am I doing here? I just wanted him to use his hands fingers to count like 1, 2, 3. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I gotta go.
Usually he's using his fingers to eat chocolate pudding, but that would be interesting. But no, he looked around the room to see if anybody else was going to raise their hand, and then it was so pathetic. It was so sad. And I want to play this clip because, this guy has been ducking the abortion question every election cycle. He did it before he was running for re-election for governor last year, after he had signed the 15-week abortion ban with no exceptions for rape or incest or human trafficking. People were asking, well, you're going to sign a heartbeat bill. How much worse is this going to get here? And he's always very coy about it. There's always some word salad about it. And for a while, he was coy about it last night until Bret Baier finally cornered him.
You got to do what you think is right. I believe in a culture of life. I was proud to sign the heartbeat bill. I remember one of the most impactful moments of my life was when I heard the heartbeat of my oldest daughter in my wife's womb, and then saw the sonograms of all 3 of my kids. What the Democrats are trying to do on this issue is wrong, to allow abortion all the way up to the moment of birth. I know a lady in Florida named Penny. She survived multiple abortion attempts. She was left discarded in a pan. Fortunately, her grandmother saved her and brought her to a different hospital. We're better than what the Democrats are selling. We are not going to allow abortion all the way up till birth, and we will hold them accountable for their extremism.
But just to be clear, Governor, would you sign a 6-week ban federally?
I'm going to stand on the side of life. Look, I understand Wisconsin is going to do it different than Texas. I understand Iowa and New Hampshire are going to do different. But I will support the cause of life.
Charlie Pierce, 3 questions. Number 1, penny in a pan. What are the odds that she actually exists? Number 2.
That one's off the boards. No bet. That is an absolutely made up story. As I believe was the story about the kid who took one fentanyl-laced Percocet and died.
Second question about this clip.
Penny.
Where is there, penny in a pan, where is there abortion up until the moment of birth? Where does that exist? Who is saying?
It only happens, and it almost never happens, when the fetus is completely non-viable.
Right.
And the mother's health is in danger.
But nobody's fighting for that. There's no Democrat that's like, we should be able to. Nobody's saying. And I like the fact that he just went so extreme. He's like, it's either 6 weeks or 9 months. There's no in between. Actually, there's about 7 months in between.
Okay, he needs his pudding fingers.
But I've got a question for the Floridians down there.
Oh, God.
Because I'm a little bit unsure. That heartbeat bill that he was so proud to sign.
Yes.
Didn't he sign that sucker at midnight?
He did.
Yes,
he signed it at midnight, and then the next day he had a press conference and did not even bring it up. He didn't even bring it up.
That's what I'm saying. He's always trying to duck the question, but that's what I want to ask you, Charlie. So proud.
One of the proudest moments of my life was when I heard the heartbeat of my firstborn. Not my other 2. That wasn't so proud. But the first one was
he was actually in the room when it happened.
Yeah.
So, oh my God. So I refuse to say 6-week abortion ban, because that's not a thing. It is an abortion ban, full stop.
Right.
I mean, if you I know these rich white men don't understand a woman's cycle, but 6 weeks is just insufficient time to even know that you're pregnant reasonably. So my question is, he just on national television said, I will sign, as I did as governor, as president. If I am made president, I will sign a federal abortion ban. Right. In any sane world, in any sane country, like America, the America that I grew up in, that would be the end. That would be the end of a campaign.
Yeah, well, this is.
Well, I mean, if you start calibrating things around this once would have killed a campaign, there wouldn't be anybody left on that stage. Seriously, because Vivek Ramaswamy's solution to the climate crisis is to do more of what created the climate crisis.
And to disband the FBI, I think I heard him say.
I'm sorry, that's just nuts.
That's a bold strategy, Colin. Let's see how it works out for him.
You're goddamn right, meatball.
I have to ask about, this is the thing too. You asked about Florida and Florida's perspective. Not that we have any perspective. And if you're confused about Florida, rest assured Floridians are confused about Florida. But there was a lot of gross misrepresentations of this guy and his record. I mean, the audience clapped when he talked about getting rid of CRT. I don't think the audience knows what CRT is. The audience clapped when he admitted to removing duly elected officials from their positions because he disagreed with them. He talked about how we need education, not indoctrination. A week after they approved the Florida Department of Education, PragerU, who proudly proclaims their educational, quote unquote, educational materials to be indoctrination materials, and finally talked about our country being in decline, and that we need. Well, of course, the punchline that he used over and over again about Joe Biden needs to go back to his basement. I'm surprised he didn't say dustbin of history or whatever he likes to say. But he said that we must reverse Bidenomics so that the middle class families have a chance to succeed again. We cannot succeed as a country if you are working hard and can't afford groceries, a car, or a new home. And of course, then he had to mention Hunter Biden for the bingo card. But what I'm saying, Charlie, in Florida, it's all worse than the average inflation. National average is like 3%. It's 9% in Florida. The cost of a home, we have the least affordable housing market in the country down here. We are paying 2 and 3 times for home insurance, car insurance. People are being dropped from Medicare and Medicaid who shouldn't be. Like, all of the things that he is blaming Biden for are 2, 3, 4 times worse here in Florida.
Well, yes, and we haven't even mentioned leprosy.
We're bringing it back. We're bringing leprosy back, Charlie.
I was going to say, make leprosy great again.
Charlie Pierce.
No, I mean the guy. First of all, the guy is the worst retail politician I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy makes my old friend Michael Dukakis look like Huey Long.
Remember when it was enough to go woo when I was enough to get you kicked off the ballot. I remember that one guy goes, "Woo, we won!" Woo!
Howard Dean.
Yeah, Howard Dean, and
that was the end of his whole campaign,
of his whole career, of his whole political career. He was done. He was an elite. And then
we sent him back to the basement.
Yeah, and then now people are like, let's see who could say the crazier thing.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Vivek said disband the FBI. I'm pretty sure he said that.
Well, he has said that. I don't know if he said it last night. I don't remember.
It was in crosstalk.
He has said that.
Yeah, he said it in some crosstalk, and it was just, bonkers. Yeah. Charlie Pierce, find him at Esquire.com. I mean, better you than me, I guess. Thank you for falling on your sword and going to Milwaukee for us.
It's been a gas. Avoid the leprosy.
You're goddamn right, meatball.
Tuesday, Miami Mayor Francis Suarez's campaign was deleting online posts like this.
I'm very excited to let you all know that we have qualified for the first GOP debate.
He erroneously claimed that last week, saying, quote, "See you in Milwaukee."
See you in Milwaukee, even though I'm not permitted to participate in the debate, I still claim that I'm in it. Yo, you can't say that it's over just because it didn't start. It only costs $1 for a $20 gift card. Feds are breathing down my neck and giving me in China over $500,000 from a flower shop in China. Rest assured, all my numbers are legit. I didn't start a campaign to just fundraise and then pocket it. El Presidente, ni de coña. Es un perdedor, Ponzi postalita, thinks he's a great leader. Tanto de culo. Es un perdedor, this guy's human garbage. unfit for office.
If you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out.
Fear and Florida men on the campaign trail. Nery Saenz.
I was right in the middle of a reptile zoo. And somebody was giving booze to these goddamn things.
So, Miami Mayor Ponce Postalita, Francis Suarez, announced last week, both he and his political committee, that he had made the debate. Right. He had qualified for the debate. There was a whole list of, you had to have a certain number of unique contributors, donating to the campaign. So we tried all kinds of schemes. He had raffled off messy inner Fort Lauderdale tickets. He sold $20 Visa gift cards for a $1 donation to his campaign. And then he claimed that he was polling at least 1% in multiple national and early state, early primary state polls. It was not true. We don't even know if any of it was true, but he lied. And it was, I guess I kind of missed him on the debate stage, to tell you the truth.
I would have loved to have seen what he would have, quote unquote, contributed on the debate stage. Because already we talked about that's already a show to begin with. But I would have loved to have seen what he would have been like. Hey, guys, Bitcoin, huh? Like, I just would have loved to have seen him say some crap. And you're like, what? People are like, what are you talking about? Like,
with a couple of bros. At the end
well, that's a good question. Like, what would the Francis Suarez GOP presidential primary debate bingo card have looked like?
Yes.
What would, like, Bitcoin obviously would be one.
He's already talked about that. He's talked about that if he was to become president,
right?
That he's open to accepting Bitcoin as payment.
Well, rest assured that will not be an issue. I think he has the same odds of becoming president as I have of becoming president, which is 0.0% or less than 0, which is how he was polling in some places. Even though he was like he was polling at 0.3% or 1%, the margin of error was like 4 or 5%, meaning that he still could actually be polling at negative 4%.
That's how he polls in my house. That's how
it's anecdotally, he finally backtracked and had to admit that he didn't actually, despite posting videos about it, he had a big pinned tweet that said, "See you in Milwaukee. I qualified." And man, he just got brutalized by the press. So earlier this week, on Monday and Tuesday, Francis Suarez had the worst 36 hours ever.
Of a political campaign?
I think of his life. I think of anybody's life, really. It's what the South Florida Business and Wealth magazine called Mayor Suarez's terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. There was just vicious coverage from every major news outlet, the broadcast networks, the cable channels, every online periodical, and we have a tiny sample of them here in the top 5 Francis Suarez headlines from his worst day ever. Number 5, after failing to make the debate, Francis Suarez deletes old tweet saying he made it. Can we do sad trombone for this one instead?
I don't think I have that.
These top 5s. This top 5 is brutal. Number 4 is a tie, Nery.
Okay.
There are two zingers from the Miami New Times. The first is Mayor Suarez baloney peddling goes national with presidential debate fiasco.
Mr. Mayor, you're brilliant. You were super smart.
And the other, tied for 4th, is Congressman calls Francis Suarez clown following presidential debate debacle. I like that they were married to presidential debate debacle, fiasco, that kind of shtick.
In Miami, we are definitely not woke.
So, number 3.
Got that right.
Rep Matt Gaetz rips Miami Mayor Suarez after he fails to make debate stage.
Dude, you have that guy?
That guy.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
He's ripping into you? That's hilarious. Can you imagine that guy? Oh boy, that's
when Representative Venmo is dunking on you. And let me tell you, there wasn't one tweet. There was 2 tweets. There was like 3 or 4 tweets in like rapid succession where you could clearly just see Beavis there like cackling over his phone like as he was sending these tweets. It was miserable. It was for Francis Suarez. Number 2, it's time for Francis Suarez to drop out of 2024 GOP presidential race, according to Francis Suarez.
How can I help?
Because Francis Suarez had previously said multiple times at the Iowa State Fair and on television that if a candidate didn't make this first debate, that it was over, that they should drop out of the race.
And then they asked him, if that include you? And he says, yes, if I didn't, if that were to be me. Like, they clarified, and he was like, yep, double down.
No, he said.
You're goddamn right, meatball.
You never hear too much of that. And number 1 from the hometown Miami Herald. Suarez's VIP appearances at F1 World Cup spark complaint to State Ethics Commission. Excuse me. I was at the Meadowlark Buffet before this at the Golden Corral over there at the island in the kitchen.
And their logic is that he went to these things, so then they're saying it's not ethical for him to.
So here's what happened. Right. So Formula One weekends, 2 of them, 22 and 23. Mm-hmm. He was a guest this year, in 23 at least, of Ken Griffin. The billionaire from Chicago moved down here. He has business before the city. He is a client of Francis Suarez's law firm, and he has many lobbyists on his payroll who are lobbying the city and lobbying the mayor. And so you cannot take a gift of more than $100 without first declaring it, but second, this was worth at least $34,000 that he accepted for free.
But I'm sure none of that will take into account when it comes time to making, laws and approving things that this guy, I'm sure nothing.
Absolutely. This man is nothing but objective and fair and would never exploit his private position for
nothing but the highest of moral standards.
Yeah.
And when you said King Griffin, I thought you were talking about the former Seattle Mariners outfielder.
No, I'm talking about the billionaire hedge fund pimp from Illinois, from Chicago, who moved down here, bought Adrian Arsh's house.
Sure.
As you do.
As one does.
And is now been very generous in this community, particularly to the mayor. Yeah. And also, the mayor was spotted at the World Cup last year in the private box of David Beckham, who himself is a registered lobbyist in the city of Miami. Okay. This is some real unethical, potentially corrupt shit that Francis Suarez is doing, okay?
Oros con man, bro!
So this is I like to see Nery's face when we just play these. I just go through the whole card list here and just
because I say bro a lot. The name of one of my podcasts is called What's Up, Bro. So I say bro a lot, but I'm not a mayor. I should be able to say bro all the time, but I'm not a mayor. Yeah. I'm not a mayor.
What if he runs for president?
So here's the thing. I think this is basically over. Francis Suarez's presidential campaign, and I don't know how I feel about it. On the one hand, I want to dance a hora, and on the other hand, I want to sit Shiva. I don't really know. It's bittersweet.
But here's the thing: if he's off of the presidential campaign, doesn't that mean he's back into the Miami mayor office?
Well, one thing's for sure: he's not going to be running around the country lying about his record and taking credit for accomplishments that he had less than nothing to do with.
Not with that attitude, Billy. Challenge accepted for Francis.
This is a guy who ran on his record as the mayor of Miami, launched his campaign 3,000 miles away in California.
Sure.
Okay. And did not get a single endorsement or any support whatsoever from another elected official in Miami who served with him, no commissioners, no mayors. There's like 34 municipalities plus a county mayor in Dade County. None of them came out in support of this guy. I mean, this was just an absolute, utter humiliation. You had 2 congressmen, Gates and, in that other headline, Carlos Jimenez, who both took shots at it. Jimenez called him a clown, and that was the nicest thing he's ever said about him.
Yeah, didn't they have beef when the whole thing happened with the buildings that came down? Those two were beefing, right? Jimenez
nothing but beef. Nothing but beef. These guys. But the question is what does this guy have a future? Because I thought that he was going to run for president. He was vying for some kind of cabinet post in a second Trump administration if it was going to happen. and then he'd come back, he'd raise a ton of money, and he'd come back.
But he has an FBI investigation open on him. I think his future looks, I think he's got like...
It looks like this.
12 to 15 years is his future.
But name a mayor in Miami-Dade that doesn't have an ongoing FBI investigation. It's a rite of passage, like a kinsey or a bar mitzvah.
That's hilarious.
You know, it really is. But I would have thought that he was going to run for county mayor against Danielle Levine-Cava next year. But I think he was so humiliated. I think he is just like
I don't think you don't know the depth of how you cannot humiliate somebody like that. You and I would be humiliated. People with reasonable people would be humiliated. This guy sees that as a notch on his belt. He's like, bring it. You saw, I survived that. I can survive more humiliation. That's how he sees it.
Financial literacy skills.
I think if I made a documentary about this guy, it would be called Cuckold Cowboys.
I like the fact that you say if. Billy, you know you're gonna. You know you're gonna.
Okay. Don't con man.
If is Spanish for when.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot on this program about the Florida Department of Education's ludicrous and racist new Black history curriculum. We've had a particular emphasis on the section that addresses the so-called benefits of slavery. I'm doing air quotes now. Hard I'm getting carpal tunnel. But journalist and cultural critic who has been called one of the most eloquent writers in America, Michael Harriot. He is also the author of the upcoming book, Black AF History, the Un-whitewashed Story of America, and I can't wait to read TF out of it. In one of his recent op-eds at thegrio.com, entitled, Florida's Black History Standards Are Even Worse Than Reported, Michael makes the bold observation that the benefits of slavery section in this curriculum is barely the tip of the iceberg. That actually, once you dig into these new standards of the Black history curriculum here in the state of Florida, it gets so much worse. He is also a self-proclaimed white peopleologist. I believe, Roy, you studied white peopleology in school, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
In fact, he does it every day here on the show.
I have a doctorate now.
It's an ongoing experiment in Roy's life. Michael Harriot, thank you so much for being here, and let's dive right in. You've got a list of 10, but can you give us some of the lowlights here of how does it get worse than a section entitled The Benefits of Slavery? How could it get any worse?
Well, one of the things that I pointed out is that the curriculum takes this perception that whites, like the only time it mentions white people is for when they helped Black people. So, for instance, it doesn't mention any slave owners except for Black slave owners. Wow. And so,
boy, that is some whataboutism. Holy shit!
So it mentions two names, and which means that the teachers are required to teach that these two Black people owned slaves, in spite of the fact that 99.5% of slave owners were white. So you left with that narrative that Republicans always say, well, you know, there were Black people who owned slaves too. It talks about slavery. It talks about slavery in this broad view and doesn't specify that, you know, the kind that was in America was race-based. It was intergenerational. It was perpetual. It was inherited, and it was constitutional, right? So most of the countries that got rid of slavery did so because, you know, someone argued before their version of a Supreme Court or a justice that, hey, this is illegal in our country, and they got rid of it. We couldn't do that in America. We had to change the fundamental document that our country was founded on to get rid of it. It doesn't mention that. The interesting thing, though, is that it pushes this conservative narrative. For instance, it points out that it lists the civil rights people that the teachers are supposed to teach about, right? So like Harriet Tubman and Martin Luther King. And then it lists Black civil rights leaders like Thomas Sowell, who was not a civil rights leader. He was just a conservative Black dude who Republicans echo because he's Black. and it lists these black conservatives as civil rights leaders, and that despite the fact that these guys have never led a civil rights organization, most black people don't respect their opinions on civil rights or black movements. And so it takes all of these conservative narratives and it cements them, and it makes teachers teach them to students across the state.
Between what's happening in Florida, what's happening in Arkansas with Sarah Huckabee Sanders saying that she doesn't want to teach African-American studies because she doesn't want to, quote unquote, spread hate. And between what happened on Wednesday's debate with all the candidates saying that they want to go after teachers' unions and wanting to get rid of the Department of Education, let's say both sides of the Congress and the White House, worst case scenario, goes red. Could there be a situation where there's a nationwide policy on what to teach students in school?
Yes, that's very likely. So first of all, this idea of getting rid of the U.S. Department of Education is not a new idea. It has been a Republican talking point for a few years, right? Like Betsy DeVos, who was the Secretary of Education, is an advocate of getting rid of the Department of Education so that, these standards won't be nationalized. And there's also another subtle reason, because the U.S. Department of Education is what gives out Pell Grants and these loans so that underprivileged and people in lower income families can attend college. So that idea is longstanding, but the idea of a nationwide standard of teaching what they could teach has been around for a long time. It started with the Lost Cause movement, right? And in a sense, it already exists, right? Because if you see, there are certain things in textbooks. I did an article a few years ago about, I went and researched the senators who were opposed to teaching the Civil War. And I looked into what they learned about the Civil War from the textbooks they used when they were in school. And so this standardized national textbook thing is a product of the Lost Cause movement that's been around since the 1900s. And so in a sense, they have already whitewashed, like the thing that they're fighting against, this whitewashed version of history, is an effort to cement their efforts to unwhitewash the history that they successfully whitewashed in the early 20th century.
Having been a product of the Miami-Dade County public school systems, the Florida public education system, I can attest to the fact that I think the Black history curriculum was already woefully inadequate to begin with back when I was in school. But now, after falsely labeling that and other curriculum here in the public school system as left-wing indoctrination and misinformation, they're in fact deliberately using that as an excuse, that false premise, to justify what is unquestionably right-wing indoctrination and replacing facts, though perhaps woefully inadequate, with deliberate misinformation and propaganda. That's why I think it's so important to call out some of this misinformation, which you do in your op-ed. So let me ask you about this one particular line that I just found absolutely fascinating. Your take on this, that Black quote-unquote patriots fought in the American Revolution.
Right. So that's been a thing that's been around for a long time, and I write about it in my book. And there is no documentation that, or no basis for that, right? So most of the Black people who fought in the American Revolution fought against America, right? 4 times as many, right? Scholars estimate about 5,000 fought for the United States, or what we call the Patriots, not the ones from New England, but about 20,000 to 25,000 fought against the Patriots. And there was a specific reason, right? Because they weren't fighting for, like, it was one country, right? A country, this is like a British franchise over here in America. But what they were fighting for was their own freedom. So the British says, hey, if you fight for us, we'll free you. The Americans, the ones who fought for America, were forced into fighting for the U.S. because they were like substitute soldiers for white guys who didn't want to fight, or they were promised like, hey, if you fight for us, then maybe we'll free you. Well, they reneged almost every time, but they were fighting for their own freedom. They didn't even have this idea of like, fighting for what was the patriot cause, right? This freedom didn't exist for them, so they wouldn't have anything to fight for.
That's like Operation Human Shield in South Park, in the South Park movie, where they had like literally like all the black people, like why would like just as body substitutions? That's like horrendously awful, right? That's just Jesus Christ. And that's what they're teaching. That's what, or we're not teaching, I guess. Which is
that is what that is what they want to start teaching now in Florida schools. And Michael, let me ask you this one is particularly compelling because I think it speaks to the misinformation that a lot of us have been taught for quite some time now. But now specifically, according to your op-ed, the standards will supposedly teach students about the, quote, political figures who strove to abolish the institution of slavery, end quote, such as Abraham Lincoln. And Florida also requires its educators to explain, quote, the desire of the Continental Congress to end the importation of slaves, end quote. And George Washington is listed as a, quote, key figure in the quest to end slavery, quote, end quote. Why is this bullshit?
Well, so again, back to that narrative, like, Ron DeSantis always says that, well, slavery wasn't ended. The reason slavery ended was because the founders set forth this path that would eventually end slavery. Well, George Washington chased an enslaved woman that he previously owned on a judge to escape until he died. He didn't free a single enslaved person during his life. He'd never introduced a bill. He'd never introduced legislation. He never talked to Congress about ending slavery. So that's just absolutely false. The same thing is true with Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln expressly said that if I could save the Union by freeing all of the slaves, I would. If I could save the Union by freeing none of them, I would. My goal is not to end slavery, but to save the Union. And then we also have documentation of where he says, like, I believe that there must be a position of superior and inferior. And as long as I'm alive, the superior position will belong to the white man. So teaching this, like this one isn't whitewashed. It's just a false narrative to kind of ensure that people believe this so-called idea of American exceptionalism and that we are the ones who dreamed up the idea of liberty and justice for all is just wrong, right? And I don't even think, like, the Republicans, they'll say, well, this makes people hate America. And I don't even think that, right? Like, if you had a bad roof on your house and you said, man, this roof on my house stinks, it doesn't mean you hate your house. Doesn't mean you don't want to live there anymore. It means, hey, there's something wrong with my house and I want to address the problem because I like my house, because I like my home, because I want to live here. And those are two different things. So any criticisms of America's history is not hate for this country. It is a desire to do what they say in the Constitution, create a more perfect union.
And as the famous saying goes, if you do not learn history, you are doomed to repeat it. And I do want to point out one really compelling fact.
Oh, am I going to be a slave? What's going to happen?
Well, in Florida, I mean, there's no telling. I mean, the way the backwards slide here, I think is scary. It's beyond just like, education curriculum. I mean, it's what, and because there's going to be a generation of Floridians, of children who are going to learn this bile and be told that this bullshit is gospel. And there's a fact in Michael's article that's sort of the mic drop on this George Washington being listed as a key figure in the quest to end slavery, and that he died owning 317 enslaved people. So what did he do to, end slavery? I mean, and again, does that mean you hate George Washington? Does that mean he's not the first president of the United States? Does that mean he's not a hero of the American Revolution? Whatever you want to say, it doesn't, again, to Michael's point, it doesn't make you hate, you don't have to hate, you just have to accept that these people were fundamentally flawed, the people who founded this country. But then that gets into a even deeper discussion about systemic racism and the idea that this country was built on a foundation like of racists, by racists, for racists. And that we've been trying to, that for decades or centuries, we've been trying to undo and roll back. And now, or I should say move forward, not roll back, but move forward and beyond that and be better than that. And now we're in the case, at least here in Florida, and the Florida of today is the Arkansas of tomorrow, as we know. We export this Florida to other states in the union, and they think that this is somehow a good idea and a move toward the future. I think this is what belongs, to paraphrase Ron DeSantis, in the dustbin of history, is this lies, misinformation, and propaganda. It's about teaching the truth, not about teaching hate. And Michael, I'll give you the last word.
Well, one of the things that I like to point out is that these people aren't opposed to Black history. They're opposed to white history. They're trying to whitewash what white people did. They're trying to whitewash the brutality of what white people did, the systems that white people dreamed up to give advantages to white people. So it's not Black history. They're okay with you saying something about Harriet Tubman, but what they're trying to do is erase their history.
I don't know about that, Michael. I think it might be both on that one.
little column A, little column B, Roy.
Is there any talk about
it's like mixing the slushies at 7-Eleven.
Is there any talk, Michael, in the curriculum, because I haven't looked through it, but is there any talk about how much the white people sacrifice giving Black people the rides over here? Like, is there like any kind of that? Because you didn't say
Yeah, they talk about that, like slavery existed on every continent and in every culture. They don't talk about the differences in America's version of slavery, but the rides, like if they just gave us back our gas money and gave us, all of our stuff that we helped them build, we'd be cool with that too. So, like, give us back the gas money, bro.
Yeah.
You can find Michael Harriot at thegrio.com. Also, pre-order his new book, which is coming out like any day now or any week now, Black AF History, the Un-whitewashed Story of America. And I know there's going to be a lot of pissed off people out there that are going to want to call the Because Miami complaint line after that. 786-505-9842. That's 786-505-9842. I think we pissed off some racists, so I hope we get some voicemails.
Well, thank you guys for having me. And I love your show. Like, I am a watcher and a listener of Because Miami. So it's not just like you guys calling me and I'm agreeing to be on here.
It's all because of me, Michael. I appreciate that.
It's you.
You're the one, Michael. You're the one. You're our one listener. We had to have you on since you haven't been calling the hotline.
Did you guys watch the documentary, The Swamp Kings?
No.
Why?
I'm not going to watch that. No, I am not a Gators fan. Sorry for all my Gator friends. Sorry to Udonis Haslem, but no.
But all right, so
I have not seen it either.
All right, well, from Billy's perspective, I kind of understand. From Roy, just because you're I guess you're a UM fan. Is that
I am, yes.
So I don't care. I don't have any college allegiance. I went to Miami-Dade Community College for 7 years. For 7 years, I went there. I went to Miami-Dade Community College for so long that while I was going there, Miami-Dade Community College got accredited and became Miami-Dade College.
They dropped the C.
Yeah. So Miami-Dade Community College.
Plenty of C students at that place, right?
Miami-Dade Community College actually graduated, got a degree before I did, because I never got a degree from Miami-Dade Community College.
Did you study white peopleology like Roy did?
I did. And so
that's how I transferred to FIU.
But UF. Anyways, I watched the documentary. I gotta say two things. One, I enjoyed the documentary, but I enjoyed it as like saying like, oh, this is really cool. But you left a lot off the table. It was like it's like somebody watched your documentary, Billy, and then said, "I want to do this, but not as good." I want to do this.
That's flattering.
They really like, because you being a UM alum were like, "I'm going to talk about everything, the good, bad, and the ugly." And they were like, "We're going to talk about everything, the good, the awesome, and the great." And I was like, okay, all right, that's whatever. Well, that's a way to go. That's one way to go about it, I guess.
From what little I've heard about it, like you shouldn't, as a rule, take the Florida out of the University of Florida. And you should never take the fuckery out of Florida fuckery. Yeah. Like, that's part of the appeal to me of that of that story. But again, this is the challenge of making documentaries these days is when it comes to celebrities, whether it's sports or music or whatever it is, it's all access driven now. And so, or a lot of it is access driven now. And so you're not making documentaries about people anymore. You're making documentaries with people. They're all like kind of co-producers, and the only way they'll participate is if they have, if not final cut, then at least some editorial say. And as a result, it makes it a little bit harder to tell the truth or the whole truth about certain things.
I was just waiting for them to mention Aaron Hernandez, right?
Did they?
They literally mentioned. And that's it, man. They were like in passing. They were like, this was
the tight end for Florida.
No, they literally said
that's it.
This is the they said this.
You may have heard of him.
I think it was like 2008 or whatever it was. It was like
mugshot.
They said that year's incoming freshman class. This is how great the class was, and they named all these people. One of which being Aaron Hernandez. That was it. They didn't talk about. They didn't mention.
So I was right.
Yeah, they really were like, "Oh, look at all this talent that we had on the field." But and they're not wrong. There was talent on the field, but there was.
He was a killer. He was.
He was
definitely killed on the field.
Yeah,
wow.
And so
on and off.
They didn't mention anything. There was like I'm not even exaggerating, for like 45 seconds, they talked about that a lot of these players would get in trouble by the law. There would be a lot of bar fights.
You don't
and stuff
say.
like that. But they didn't mention They didn't mention. You know what they mentioned? They mentioned the lawyer that works for the University of Florida.
Busy guy.
They said that the University of Florida, one player did say that University of Florida runs Gainesville. It's not the mayor, it's not the sheriff, it's the University of Florida. And if you think somebody from University of Florida is going to allow their players to go so that's like literally 45 seconds of airtime in episode 3 of a 4-episode series. I enjoyed the hell out of the docuseries, but just as a football fan, and then I was just like, as a comedian, just laughed. And I was like, you just gonna gloss over the murders? That's hilarious.
Well, speaking of future college football documentaries in the making, breaking news: John Ruiz, the University of Miami's former NIL sugar daddy, his company LifeWallet is facing its first class action lawsuit for allegedly misleading its shareholders and squandering shareholder money to bankroll flights aboard his luxurious 767. Which has like a movie theater in it. It's like
that'd be an asset in the bankruptcy.
It's so, oh gosh. I hope Tyler Van Dyke winds up with it, is what I hope.
So his LifeWallet, that was the app that like you have everything, all your information in there?
Yeah, if you'd like to give John H. Ruiz all of your credit card information, your medical history, your social security number,
that just seems like a bad idea all the way around.
It does. And by the way, there's no company anymore, and it's just lawsuits, like defending themselves and suing other people. And the funniest thing is they were just sued last week by a company that they owe $7 million to, and they just filed in response to that because in that lawsuit they call LifeWallet an alleged Ponzi scheme and like an outright like fraud. Yeah. And so LifeWallet has said, we'd like to strike those words from the pleadings. Just so at least you can accuse us of all this shit, but don't call us. Yeah. Just don't call us a Ponzi scheme. Ay, Dios mío. And now, speaking of con men and fraudsters, our Miami moment is a flashback to former Florida House Speaker Jose Oliva from Hialeah. He's actually from Miami Lakes, but Hialeah, Miami Lakes, tomato, plantain, plantain. It's the same thing. But he was just brought on as part of the reboot of the Ron DeSantis presidential campaign as a spokesperson and senior advisor. But here he is talking to Jim DeFeeti on CBS and repeatedly calling women, quote, a host body, end quote, when asked about abortion.
There's a host body, and that host body has to have a certain amount of rights because at the end of the day, it is that body that carries this entire other body to term. The question is, what is the value of that life, and is it subordinate to the value of its host body? And so then one has to think, till what time does the host body have veto power over this other life?
You realize there are a lot of people who will hear you use phrases like host body and say to you, that's a woman, that's a person. That's not that's, you're sort of creating a scenario where you're looking at that not so much as a person, but as a host body.